Hey everyone, my name is Rosie and welcome back to my channel. Now, before we jump into 2023 and get started with this new year, I wanted to take a look back at all of the art that I've made in 2022. And instead of just flipping through everything and looking at it, I thought we'd do something a little bit more fun. So I have ranked all of the art that I made in the past year from worst to best, and I figured we'll start at the bottom, work our way to the top, and look at every piece of art that I've made. Now, we do have 50 pieces of art to look at today, so we better get started. Coming in at number 50, the bottom of the barrel, we have this piece, Mushroom Gondola. I like the idea of this piece. I just think it's maybe a little bit boring and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so it's at the bottom of the barrel. Number 49 is a piece from my wacky wedding photo album, and it's this piece, Wedding Walkaway. I, again, like the idea of this piece. I just think the perspective is a little bit weird. The elements kind of didn't fit in the scene quite right. It's close, but just not one of my favorites. Number 48 is from a particularly challenging challenge that I did. I made a collage using only scraps from my recycling bin. So I created this mushroom lady with these sort of all these weird body parts. And for what I was working with, this piece is pretty good. I just think in general, it's kind of weird and I don't super love it. But again, for only using scraps, it's really not that bad. Number 47 is a piece that has gone missing. I have checked everywhere in my art room. I do not know where I put this, but I created these two pieces that work together in this double frame that's connected by this hinge. And I was inspired by the frame, and I do like these sort of sloth creatures holding onto objects, these sort of monkey things. I think these pieces are fun. They're just a little bit simple. And I think the fact that I lost it means I wasn't the biggest fan of it. So we'll leave it at that. Number 46 is a piece I made in a video where I think I made a couple of collages, and it's this guy using this computer that's coming out of this tinfoil pouch. And I will be honest, I did not even remember that I made this collage until I looked back at all of my footage. And I think there's a reason for that. It's not super memorable, it's very simple, but it also doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think it's kind of fun, but not my favorite. Number 45 is a really fun one. I do quite like it. It's these two dinosaurs that are fighting over this beer bottle, and I put the cap of the bottle in this dinosaur's hand. And I do think this is a fun piece. I just think it's maybe a little bit too simple. Maybe if I had included a background. It's actually not glued, it's just all taped together. So I could come back to this theoretically, maybe add a couple more pieces, and maybe I would like it a little bit more. Number 44 is another piece from my wacky wedding photo album. And it's this piece I used gold leaf on. Now, I think sometimes when I do challenges, this wasn't really a challenge, but when I sort of decide to use a certain type of medium or do a certain thing in a video, I think maybe don't make the best collage because I'm too worried about trying to use the element I'm trying to use in the video, if that makes sense. So I think I let the fact I had to use gold leaf in this sort of get in the way of making a really good collage. Now, I think that that's okay. I still like this piece. I just think it could have been a lot stronger had I not been worried about trying to add the gold leaf. Number 43 is a piece I made very, very recently, and it's this skull with these gems coming out of it. Now, I think I would like this piece a lot better if I had added a background, but I, for the life of me, could not find a background that I liked. So I just did it on white, but I do think that's part of the reason why I don't think this was as successful. Number 42 is from probably the hardest challenge I've ever done. I used a random number generator to find random images to use to make a collage. And I ended up making this sort of teacup garden with this giant and also the little guy on the spoon. And then there's sea creatures in the background. This piece makes absolutely no sense, but for the images I was given in the randomness of it all, I think the fact that I was able to create anything is remarkable. So I am proud in the circumstances of what I was able to create, but I think in general, this is not one of the best collages I've ever made. Next up at 41 is this piece I'm calling Good Light. And I do really love the flame that we were able to create with this texture that was from those vintage magazine covers. I do overall like this piece, but I think there's just nothing that funny about it. Most of my collages are wacky and there's something weird happening. This is just, I think it's beautiful, but I just think it's kind of boring. At number 42 is a very wacky and weird collage. It is Fridge Man. I remember when I made this collage, I kind of stopped in the middle of it because I didn't know what to do. And I remember this piece being a little bit of a struggle, but I do think at the end I created sort of this wacky scene, but I don't know, there's just something about it that maybe I don't have fond memories of making this piece. And so I just think it's wacky and fun, but not incredible. Next up at 39 is this sailboat sailing around a pan of sausages. I do really love the color contrast in this one, but I do think that it kind of doesn't read super well, and I think that it could have been stronger, maybe with a different combination, but I think overall this one's fun. Number 38 is a couple of pieces that I thought were gonna be a hit, but this video did not do that well. It didn't do that well on social media, but I thought they were so fun. I created these mini little pieces of art to put on my pair of Crocs. And so there were a little art gallery on my feet. Now, because they had to be so small, they're not the most, detailed collages. They're very simple because of their size. But I think overall this concept was really fun, and I was laughing the entire time I was making these. I think these are so funny, but I don't think they were a huge hit. Maybe Crocs aren't cool anymore. I don't know, but I thought these were so fun. Next up at 37 is a piece that I call Love Me Not. And I do love the story behind this piece, I really do. But I think maybe the photo of the ballerina doesn't quite work that well with the background. There's something about this piece that I think is a little bit awkward, but overall I love the story, and I do think it is a sort of a beautiful little piece. Number 36 is from my collage journal. I did this full page spread of this sort of underwater landscape, but with these animals. I think the idea of this piece is really great. I love the idea of bringing coral into a landscape and having it be sort of like bushes, plants, trees, that kind of thing. But I think overall this piece is a little bit cluttered. There's a lot going on. The whole point of my collage journal in general is to have a place to experiment more, do things that I wouldn't sort of normally do with my art. So I think this is the perfect piece to put in my collage journal, and I'm glad that I did it. I just think overall it's a little bit too chaotic. Number 35 is another piece for my wacky wedding photo album, and it is this giraffe bride. I took this wedding dress and sort of shoved a giraffe in it, and I think at first glance this piece is really funny and I love the humor in it, but I will say the giraffe head where it meets the dress I think is a little bit awkward. And I think the head in general is maybe a little bit too big. Maybe I'm being a little bit nitpicky because I do think the legs in the dress work really well. But I think there's just a couple awkward things in this piece that didn't come together quite right. So this one's 35. Next up at 34 is this bathtub with all these butterflies emerging out of it. I do think this piece is really beautiful. I do kind of wish I'd maybe put a background and not just done this on white, because I do think there's a lot of potential to have the butterflies maybe interacting with the background, maybe add that extra element. But overall, I do really like this idea. I like the concept. I do love the composition of it. I just think maybe it'd be a little bit better with the background. Next up at 33 are these two friends reading this Life magazine in these flowers, and I love the scale of this piece. I love how the flowers are really small and it makes the boys reading look really, really small. I just think because this image is so large and there's just one thing right in the middle, it is maybe losing a little bit of its oomph just because of how small it is in relation to the size of the page. But that's a pretty nitpicky thing. I do like this combo a lot. I just think maybe I'm not utilizing the full image. Next up at 32 are two pieces that are sort of a series. I took one image and cut out the subject, used the subject in one image and used the cutout of that subject, the negative space, in a different image. And so these two kind of fit together. And I think this was a really fun challenge. I like the idea of using one image for two different pieces. I just think that maybe the colors are a little bit weird. And I also think some of the paint elements, the paint brushes and things, have a little bit of weird perspective in them. So I think overall, very cool concept, but I think maybe the execution was a little bit, it could have been better. Next up at 31 are the Valentines I made for Valentine's Day. I took real hearts and put it, well, not real hearts. I took images of real hearts, illustrations of them, and put other images sort of in the center of the heart, but kept the sort of veins and ventricles. And I think this concept is really, really cool, and I really love these. I don't know, I think these are really cool. So I don't know, we're getting to the point I think where I'm gonna start really liking all of the pieces I've done, because I just think these are really cool and I love them as a set, and I think they'd be a fun thing to do for a card for Valentine's Day or something like that. I don't know, I think these are fun. Coming in at 30 is probably the weirdest piece I've ever made on this channel, and it is this soup bird sculpture that I made. I took this little bird sculpture that I thrifted and decorated it with vegetables, turned the bird into a little tomato, and made it sort of like a soup statue, and then put this picture of soup behind it. This thing is just really weird, but it was so fun to make, and I would love to do more, you know, bigger 3D things like this in the future. It was really fun, but it's super weird. 29 is the shark that's attacking this boat full of people. And the perspective in this is a little bit weird, but if you look past that, I think the fact that I was able to combine this boat sort of flowing into this town, but then the shark also coming into the scene from the top, and then the little shark sighted today sign. I think overall this piece is really funny, and I really do enjoy it. The perspective is a little weird, and that's okay, but it's just such a funny piece. Next up at 28 is Jellyfish Cafe. This is one of those pieces where I had this idea and really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get these elements to fit in this scene. So I was very happy when I did. I will say I kind of wish the colors were a little bit more interesting in this. If the jellyfish were maybe more bluish green or something, it might be a little bit more interesting, but I think overall this piece is really fun. 27 is Cabbage Fisherman. This piece is just so silly. The fact that this guy is sitting in a field and using the fishing rod to fish out cabbage is just so funny. Why isn't this piece higher? It's so good. 26 is Can Waterfall. This is a pretty recent piece. I love how this can looks so large in this scene, and it fits with the waterfall really perfectly. This is a fun piece. I think the only thing is it's maybe a little bit simplistic, maybe why it's not a little bit higher up. But I think overall this illusion works really well, and the can fits super well into the scene. 25 is this piece right here, and the colors in this piece just make me so happy. Every time I look at it, I get a smile on my face because I think the colors just work so well together. The parrots and the background and the sun and the purple flower with the background. This piece, I think the colors just work so well. I will say because the elements are all a little floaty on the background, I think you kind of lose where you are a little bit in the scene. But I think the way the colors interact in this totally make up for that. And this piece just makes me so happy. Number 24 is another one from the Wacky Wedding photo album, and it is car shoes. I'm so happy I was able to get these Vans to kind of look like shoes on this lady's feet. I will say I think the weddingness is a little bit lost in this piece just because you can't quite see as much of the bride as maybe I would like. But I do think the fact that she has, you know, the wedding ring and it says look your best on your special day. It does read wedding, I think, but I kind of wish it was a little bit more obvious. Like if she was walking down an aisle with car shoes, that would be so funny. But anyway, I do really love this piece. It's so funny. I laugh every time I look at it. Number 23 is just a couple pages after in the wedding album, and it's a similar subject, and that is mushroom shoes. And I love the juxtaposition in this piece. The fact that we have this really beautiful wedding high heel with the bedazzled gems on it, and then you have these mushrooms, which are, you know, notoriously kind of gross, fungus, smelly sort of. The juxtaposition of those two is so great, and I love the composition. It's just simple, and I just think it's great. Number 22 is the record collage. Someone wrote in the comments of this video that this is rock music, which is just so funny. I don't know why I didn't think of that, because, you know, mountains, they're made of rock, and it's on a record, so rock music. You probably got it. It's just so funny, and I think there's some really interesting other potentials to use a record as sort of your background for your collage. So this is a really fun piece, and I like how it turned out. 21 is another one from my collage journal, and it's this spread right here. And I think this is one of the only times I've ever used text in a collage. It's time to speak of unspoken things with this puffer fish who went to college coming over this mountain hill here. I just think this spread's really fun. It's simple but cool, and I love this bee on the moon. It's like Buzz Aldrin. I don't know, there's just something really fun about this piece, and I love this sort of space colors, sort of purpley red. I don't know, just a fun spread. Number 20 is the collage that I made on this wood slice, and I love the colors in this. I love the black and white of the bone, and then the fact I only used yellow flowers. I love how restrained it is. I do think the piece is a little bit off center, just the tiniest little bit, but I try not to think about that. Also, one of the flowers is sticking off a little bit on the side, but again, I try not to think about that. And I have this piece hanging up on my wall, and I really like it. Number 19 is another spread in my collage journal, the most recent spread that I've done, and that is the holiday spread, the video that I've done most recent on my channel. I think there's so many great things happening in this spread. I love the colors. I love how festive it is. There's a couple really nitpicky things that I really don't like about this spread, but I won't get into it. Overall, I think it's very fun and very festive. Number 18 is this big city breakfast scene. And I just think the lady fits so well in these buildings, and I love the plate and the cup on the buildings. It's a simple collage, but I really do like it, and I think that they go together really well, and I just think it's a fun one. Number 17 is one of my all-time favorites, and I can't believe this was a one-source challenge. It's the hippo car fight. I cannot believe from one National Geographic magazine, I was able to create these two hippos fighting over this car. There's even spectators. This is such a fun collage, and this is sort of like what I love the most about the type of art that I do. It's just wacky and fun, and there's a lot going on, but also it's really poignant and focused right in the center with the fight. It's just so funny and so great, and I love it. Next up at 16 is goldfish in the living room, and there's so many little details about this collage that I really love. I love that I replaced a lot of the background with ocean, so it kind of looks like we're underwater. I love how large the goldfish are, and I love that I was able to tuck them into the scene and behind a lot of the objects. There's so many fun little details in this piece, and overall, I think it reads really well. I love the colors. I just think this is an A+ collage. Number 15 is another spread in my collage journal, the first spread I did, in fact, and that is space soup. So we have our little fox chef here who's putting together this bowl of space soup, and then the fox lady who is ordering it for takeout. And I think that these two work together really well, and I think it's just a really fun spread. Number 14 is very different, and I would even call it an experiment of sorts, just because it is so different than my normal pieces. And it is this large, very chaotic collage right here. I never even gave this piece a name, I think because I'm not entirely sure what's going on in it. There's so many images, so much going on, there's so many things interacting. But I do think this was a great piece to sort of push me in a different direction, try something very new. And I do think that this has influenced a couple of my other pieces that I made after this that tend to have a little bit more complicated of a background. And I think that this piece sort of pushed me in a different direction. So for that, I'm very grateful. Even though it's very chaotic, it makes almost no sense. It was still a very fun, very cool piece. Number 13 is extremely different than the one we just looked at, and that is Houseflower. And this is very simple. It's just two images put together. But I think when you find those perfect two images that just work together so right, you get a really, really compelling piece. And I just think that this one's really beautiful. And I love the sort of story with the people on the porch. This is just a really beautiful piece. Number 12 is my toilet paper piece, New Luxury. I really love what I was able to do with the toilet paper roll by adding the different textured paper. And I think overall the textures work really well together. I also think this use of text is really effective. And I'm starting to use more text in my pieces. It's something I started doing this year. I try to do a little bit more. And I think this is a time where it's really appropriate. Number 11 is my favorite spread in my collage journal, and that is the spread that I did for Halloween. And I think it's mostly because of these bat kids. I love how the bat heads fit on the bodies. I love that it looks like they're getting their portrait taken. I can't believe I got one of the kids to be able to sit in a chair. It's perfect. And I also really like the collage I did on the other side with the skull and the mushrooms and the snake. I think they work really well together. And again, my favorite spread in my collage journal. So far, at least. So we're at the top 10, and this was so hard for me to decide. The top 10, it was so hard. Just know that I love all of these, and this was very, very hard. But number 10 is actually a series, so it's 3 collages, and that is my paper doll series. So we have our galaxy lady with the space coat, we have our fish man with the fish pants, and our strawberry girl with her strawberry skirt. And I think together, this is a really cute set, and individually, I think they work really well too. So I think this set came out really great. Number 9 is a Burger Mountain. I love how effective this piece is. I think it reads really well. I also really love that I left the top irregular and it's not just straight across. I think that adds a really nice interest. And I love the little egg sandwich tunnel with the car driving through it. I think this piece is just so fun and I just love it so much. Number 8 is another series, and it's one I did pretty recently, and that is the monochromatic series. So we have our purple collage, our red collage, blue, and green collage. And I think together, these look so cool. And I will say my favorite of the series is the purple. I just love this one so much. I also think when you limit yourself to one color, you start to look at things a little bit different way. And so this was a really nice exercise, and this was so fun. I'm also planning on finishing this series at some point. I want to make a yellow and an orange collage so we can have sort of the rainbow. I think that would be really great. But so far, I think together as a set, they're really great. Number 7 was one of the most fun pieces for me to make this year, and that is the creepy doll collage. And even though it's a little bit wrinkly, I kind of screwed up the gluing of this, it is still such a fun piece. I have it sort of propped up behind me most of the time when I'm working, and I just smile every time I look at it, even though that's so weird. It's just so fun, and I love how large it is, and I love that it's on a canvas. This piece is just so good. Even though I messed it up a little bit, I can't complain. Number 6 is a collage I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that I had forgotten about, and I don't know how I forgot because it's incredible. And it is this kebab fight. So I put these kebabs in these fencers' hands and then put it in this sort of thunder and lightning scene. And it is so dramatic. There are these giants fighting with the kebabs. It is so cool, and it's so large and in charge. I cannot believe I forgot that I ever made this because it is so good. How could I forget about this? It's incredible. Next up at number 5 is one of my recent favorites, and that is Show and Tell. I love the story behind this one, that both these creatures are sort of sharing this object that they have. And also my favorite part of this whole piece, the dolphin holding the radish, didn't even come about until right at the end of me putting this piece together. And it's just so fun, and I love this piece so dearly, and that is why it's number 5. Number 4 is a collage that I look at every day, multiple times a day, really all the time, and that is my phone case. And I never get sick of this thing. I love the bunny night and the fish swimming around. It just makes me so happy to look at. I will also say it's been really nice to have when I meet someone new and I try to explain that I make collages and they're not quite getting it. I just have to show them my phone case and I can kind of show them a good example and kind of talk through how I put it together. And I feel like this has been really helpful in people sort of understanding the art that I make. So it's been nice to have this around. Number 3 is the smallest thing I've made all year, and that is my teeny tiny mini collage journal. And I love this thing so much. I love flipping through it. I just have a big smile on my face every time I flip through it. All the pieces are so cute, and I just love it so much. And it looks so cute even just closed, not even open. I am so happy I made this. Number 2 is one of my favorite pieces I've ever made, and that is Ghost Town. I love that I was able to merge so many different postcards together to create this sort of weird city scene. And then on top of that, I love the tissue paper ghosts. I love that element that they add to the scene. It's just so fun. And I want to do more of this ghost technique next year for Halloween. So stay tuned for that. And we are at the very end. Number 1 is also number 1 in my wacky wedding photo album, and that is Dino Wedding. This piece makes me so incredibly happy. Two dinosaurs getting married. What more could you want? It's just so incredible. And I love that this is the first page of my wacky wedding photo album. It just makes me so happy. So that was every collage that I've made in the past year, in all of 2022. What an incredible amount of art I was able to make. Going through all of that makes me feel so accomplished, and I'm so happy that I'm able to share all of my art with all of you. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you stay tuned for everything that I make in 2023. And so I hope you have a great new year, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.